It was just like growing up anywhere. I mean, I didn't know it was unusual to be there, and it wasn't really. So, I went to a lot of movies, but maybe kids did go to a lot of movies in those days. I don't know. We did. I went to a school that was for theatrical kids, and that was fun. Well, I went from 7th to 12th grade. And it was called Hollywood Professional School. It was sort of like, you remember, did you ever hear of Fame, the movie Fame? It was sort of like that, only it wasn't quite as glamorous. I was a dancer. And that's the reason I went there, because I was dancing, and it was, they had, you could go to school just in the morning and get all your academic stuff that way. Working, and worked in movies and nightclubs and stuff. I was in a movie called Night and Day. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It was a movie about the life of Cole Porter. And then I worked in nightclubs. I lied about my age and worked in nightclubs. And just when I was 13, I was saying I was 21, and they couldn't have believed I was 21, but nobody called me on it or anything. And then by the time I was 18, I was married and stopped dancing, or mostly stopped dancing, had kids. Got married young, I don't know, maybe it was this fashion then or something. It doesn't seem to be the fashion nowadays. Oh, I really liked it. I've always liked being a mother. It's really nice. I liked having kids, and I like to do a lot of things that kids like to do, I guess. I liked to draw with them and paint with them and play with clay with them and, you know, that kind of stuff. And going to the movies and, you know, all the stuff that kids like to do. I still like to do it. My granddaughter's coming over pretty soon, and I think we're going to go see the Bee movie. I think parents always serve as a bad example. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. Your kids kind of grow up and say, well, I'm not going to do that. And then they try to do something else, you know. And I'm sure that that was true in my case, too, you know. That my mother worked all the time I was growing up, because my father and my mother were divorced when I was 4. And so my sister and I were pretty much alone most of the time. And I always said, well, I'm not going to ever do that to my kids, you know. And so in that way, I think it affected me, and it certainly kept me married longer to do my kids' my first husband. You know, it's funny, when the world goes through, or the culture, the society you live in goes through a bad place, which there are a lot of, you don't, as a young person, I don't think you really get it, you know. And then you go to school and learn about it and say, oh, I went through that, you know. I was a depression child. At the time it was happening, I didn't know that I was deprived, you know. I thought everything was fine, and, you know, I ate every day. I didn't know what the world was going through. And the same thing with the war. I knew that there was a war on, but there were certain things that we couldn't buy, maybe, but it didn't seem to matter to me. I just didn't care that much, you know. You know, I could dance, and I could paint, and I could play with my friends, and that was what was important to me. I think later on, looking back, I can think, well, gee whiz, kids today are not so narrow. Their lives are not as narrow, I guess, as mine. But I didn't look at my life and say, what a narrow life I have, you know, because I don't think kids do. Oh, wow. If I have any regrets, you just have them. I don't think you deal with regrets. You just have them. I mean, I guess some people kill themselves or something, but I'm not about to do that. And, you know, you just, life isn't perfect. But of course, living in Santa Cruz makes up for it. I guess getting a divorce, that was the hardest thing I ever did, probably. Once you've made up your mind about something, something always happens where that thing is no longer true. And I think that makes life kind of vibrant and makes you feel searching, and so that your attitude really doesn't change through the years. It's just what you're thinking about changes. You know, what ifs. You know, there's always a million of those. Should I have done that? Did I say the right thing? Did I overlook something I should have done? Yes, the answer is yes, 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 yes. And life isn't perfect, and I am not perfect by a long shot, you know, and I know that. Oh, that's hard. I guess you just grieve and then you get over it. I think it's really hard to decide what changes you and what doesn't. I think the changes that I can recognize in my life didn't have much to do with that. Well, I think that going to school changed me more than anything else. Going to the university. Just because it made me more aware of life in general and how I fit into a historical perspective. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I used to think so when I was teaching. Teaching is really very good for one's ego. You know, it's really nice to have a lot of people think you're great. And so in that way, I suppose I was somebody's hero. Maybe not all my students, but some of them. I was just very much in love with what I taught. And I just thought it was, you know, I don't know, maybe I was going to save the world through art history or something. But it was really important to me. And when people got it, people that I was teaching, my class understood what I was saying. That just made me feel really good. And they certainly didn't all. I mean, some of them were just in there because they thought it was an easy elective course. You know. But a lot of them did get it, and a lot of them came back afterwards. Not, you know, after they got their grades, that's when I knew that they really liked it. And they came back and told me, you know, about how they felt about it, and that was nice. So I guess if I were a hero at all, it would have been for those people. There's a family purpose, which when my children were young, I felt that the purpose of my life was taking care of my kids, seeing they had some education, their bodies were healthy, and so forth. And then later on, I was going to save the world. I worked in politics and all that kind of stuff. And then later on, I decided that art was going to save the world. So I guess really I wanted to save the world. And that was the purpose, but a very general one. And I don't think I succeeded. As you get older, you realize that you're not going to save the world. And then you want to think that perhaps you haven't left the world any worse than you found it. So maybe that's the ultimate purpose. It's not hurting anything or destroying anything. I guess I can't speak for anybody but me. I would like to think that was everybody's purpose, but no. Well, person by person, not in general. I mean, it's not like painting a great painting and saving the world. I don't believe that. But I think that creation saves individuals, and if individuals are happier, the world's going to be saved. And I've just seen it work that way on so many people that I thought if you reached out to enough people and touched that creative spark that's in everybody, that they'd stop wanting to kill each other. And so, in a way, that's what I wanted to do by teaching art and talking about art. One time I had a job in it was kind of an arts council place, an arts center, and we had several art galleries. And my job was training the docents that would take people through the art galleries and explain the art to them. So I got an idea when every year we had a children's art show. Got an idea that perhaps the children themselves could do that. Instead of having adult docents, we could have children docents who would be talking about their own art. And there was a little boy who did some rather nice paintings, I thought, and seemed to be interested in being a docent. So I had sort of special training for him because he was having difficulty. He did really well. And the opening night of the exhibit, his parents came to me and they said he hasn't been able to speak in over a year. He had some traumatic event in his life, and he's now talking to people and telling them about the art on the walls. And I thought, my God, I really have saved a life. It is possible. So that kind of encouraged that thought for me, and that got me to thinking. My own life was really encouraged by art, and certainly my kids were. I don't know, that I think they found a focus, each one of them in a different form of art, but they were all interested in art. And so as I look about, I see this happening to more and more people, and I thought, well, that's the way to save the world, is one person at a time, through art. And that may be, but somebody else is going to have to take on the mantle, because I think I'm about finished with it. It's not hard to find a cause. It's hard to say no. There's so many things that you can do, and so much. Well, it's particularly in Santa Cruz. I think there's just a million causes that I could devote myself to, and I'm trying to stop doing that. That I've really had enough. But I just took on another one 2 days ago, so. I don't know. So I guess I'll go on doing it until I'm dead. I was asked to be the secretary for the Democratic Women's Club. And I thought it over and decided to do it. I don't know what people are supposed to do when they retire. You have this theory that you go off into the woods and smell the flowers or something. I don't know. But most of the people that I know that have stopped their for-pay work have volunteered at something and get a great deal out of it, I think. Grandchildren. Food. Unfortunately, I like to eat a lot. This autumn, I think, visually, it's been incredible and makes life valuable to me. The colors. We've got some Japanese elms, and they're just gorgeous, bright reds and golds, oranges, and that's a really nice. It's a valuable experience, I think. I like to read a lot. And I've always liked to read a lot, and that was a big point of contention in our household. So my mother didn't want us to read, or at least not as much as we did. My sister and I read constantly, You know, like we would wash the dishes and she would be washing, she's older than I am, so she would be washing them and I would be drying them. And she would wash them with a book propped up in front of her, and she'd be washing the dishes, reading the book. And I was drying the dishes, reading another book. And my mother would come in and she'd just really get upset about that, you know. But reading was, I guess, it was, you know, like it was before television. And we didn't listen to the radio very much. And reading just fulfilled that need to be somewhere else, you know, somewhere that was more exciting, more fun, more glamorous, perhaps. And I'm talking about when I was real little. And then when I was older, I guess art fulfilled that need for me, you know, dancing and painting and so forth. And was relatively happy, I think. I have this theory about art that you need freedom, I guess. That freedom from a lot of things. Freedom from starvation. Freedom from worrying so much about having a roof over your head. That kind of thing. And you have to sort of get beyond that in order to become a creative human being. You know, in the 60s we complained a lot about the 50s. The 50s was a materialistic age. You know, it was the age where if the refrigerator breaks down, you buy a new one. And so in a way, the people in the 60s were rebelling against that. But at the same time, they were free to do that. They had, for instance, everybody could go to school that wanted to go to school. There wasn't this terrible worry. Rents were low. Food was cheap. There was just this security for people to be able to think about other things beside grubbing for a living, you know. And it's kind of an evolution of culture, I think. Maybe you have to go through it in order to get to a place where you can change ideologies, you know. I'm not an anthropologist or a sociologist, but it seems like there's this evolution that goes on in cultures. We seem to be in a low ebb at the moment. Well, I think we're worse in a lot of ways because one way is that there's so many poor people. And there are people that will follow ideas or politicians or political thoughts, philosophies, whatever. And they'll follow them because they think that they'll be able to survive that way. And that's what put Hitler in power in Germany, was that there was so many poor people. Seems to be the way we're going right now, and that's when these despots can take power for that reason. So in that way, we're worse than the 50s, I think. I don't have anything of any great value. The things that I have are, people say, oh, you're a collector, and I'm really not a collector. A collector is somebody that's very conscious of what's going to be valuable in 20 years and that you can sell it. And even though you don't sell it, it's a matter of value, and I don't have that feeling. Years ago when I was in Mexico, I could have bought Frida Kahlo paintings for a few $100s. They're worth millions, and then the same thing is true with any other artist you can think. It's like real estate, But anyway, I'm not a collector, and the things that I have sitting around are kind of either painted by friends or they just sort of struck my fancy, or that they're fun or something, just things I like to look at. I used to teach African art history, so I got a couple of African sculptures. I really like them. I wanted to see certain things, like I would travel to go see things because it's sort of hard to teach about things if you haven't seen them. And so I would get really interested in one artist or another. And then I got involved with, I took a class in African art history, and I just sort of fell in love with it at that point and studied some more. And then I got the opportunity to teach the class, which was really exciting because I'd never taught it before, and I had to really study hard to be able to do it. And I was teaching at a place called Chapman College, which is a master's degree, but they have to have something that isn't in their field, and that's where the art history came in. So I went and taught all these people. They were engineers, and mathematicians, and scientists. It was really fun, and they'd never heard of any of this stuff. It was just completely foreign to them. Like once a week for 5 hours, where they'd be sitting in a darkened room looking at slides. Because what's interesting, I think, about African art is the meaning. I mean, they don't believe in. I mean, this is tribal art. It's not like they go to art school or anything like that. And so they don't think of it as art, you know, the way we think of it as art. They think of it as religious icons, or you know. And nowadays, of course, they don't so much. They make them for exporting them. But that one there is called a chiwara, and it comes from West Africa. It's an agricultural spirit. So when you talk about their art, you don't talk about it the same way you talk about Western art. You talk about it in terms of their religion. And that can be pretty strange to a bunch of engineers. I mean, we've never heard of anything like that before. So you have to explain as well as you can what the symbolism is. What convinces people to follow some leader or another? That's a fascinating kind of thing. But there are a lot of good people involved in it. I've met a lot of, but they're local people. I mean, I haven't met anybody like governors or presidents or people like that. But I see people that are running and have been in office locally, and there's some really nice, well-spoken, deep-thinking, caring people, I think. And that's why I'm involved in politics. National politics, I don't know. I don't know. Tune in next year. Well, I've often wished that I were religious, because I think those people that are religious feel a lot more comfortable about death than I do. I don't know what happens after one dies. I don't know if there's a life after death. Sometimes somebody that I have known that died, I think about them and I think they're in the next room, or you know, that I just saw them, which I couldn't have just seen them. And that makes me think a lot about death. But I don't have any answers. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happens. I have a feeling nothing happens, but I would like to have eternal life possible. Well, I go through periods where it does, you know, like every once in a while I think, oh my God, I'm getting old, I'm going to die, what does that mean? And I go through all this sort of sophomoric stuff in my head. And then I get over it, you know, and I go on with my life and do my stuff. And then a few years later, I go through the same thing. And I've done that like, I don't know, 10 times, 15 times, whatever. And I haven't died yet, so I don't know what happens. And right now I'm in a period of not really thinking about it. And I think that's probably the only way to handle it. No, I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what I believe in. I know by the time you're my age, you're supposed to know, but that's the thing I think about getting older that's so surprising, is that you're no different. And it's kind of like you're supposed to learn stuff, you know, you're supposed to change and get wise, and I'm just the same, you know, I think. Well, that's one of the problems with religion, is that that's, I guess, why we're having so much problems in the world, you know, all the wars. Like, well, at least one of the reasons is that everybody thinks God's on their side, you know. There's a wonderful painting, German Renaissance painting, which shows Alexander going into what was then Persia, and there was this big fight with Alexander the Macedonian, who takes over most of the world and becomes Alexander the Great. And this painting shows the two leaders meeting on their horses with lances or swords or whatever they had. And they're all both carrying their religious symbols. You know, the Muslim one and the Christian one. And they're both right. God's on both their sides, you know. And that's kind of the way we are, you know, in wars. You know, God's always on our side, whatever our side happens to be. So that makes believing in religion even harder for me. Because I'm an art historian, I've gone to a lot of churches, Christian churches, and cathedrals. And you know, you spend hours, days, weeks, months, whatever, traveling to places and going into churches, because that's who paid the money to get the art done for years. And so I love to go to churches, you know, it's just wonderful. And the peacefulness that you find in a church is just amazing. And the art, and I mean, they're just great. And so I'm scaring my husband, and I have been for many years, saying I was going to become a Catholic because I love Catholic churches so much. You know? And he doesn't want me to be a Catholic. And I don't think I will be, because I would have a hard time believing some of the material from the Catholic Church. But gee, it would be nice. It would be nice to really believe in that kind of passionate way, you know, that I really envy people that can do that, you know. You wouldn't have to worry about dying. That'd be good. I think what I value most is laughter. I think that's really important, and I think it makes all of us feel good, you know. And I don't know what makes you laugh, or you laugh, and I don't even know always what makes me laugh. But whenever it happens, it's just wonderful. And I can see where people might want to become drug addicts or something, because if they would feel that way all the time, it would be lovely. Unfortunately, they don't. But laughter is wonderful. I guess what I would like, and I guess most people would like, would be to stop the wars. And if you could do that by parceling off the laughter, that would be fine. But however we do it, I think it would be a great idea. Because I don't think it's getting any of us anywhere to fight. You know. So I think that, you know, if I had like the power to bestow whatever on the world or on people, that's what I would give everybody. I would give them a big bushel basket full of laughter.